50% of the heart attacks occur in men under the age of 50. 25% of the heart attacks occur in men under the age of 40.
Are you okay? Arvind, say something.
30s and 40s, people still end up with sudden heart attacks.
70% of the clients have insulin resistance. One fine day we may hear, oh, they underwent a sudden.
Why is it so significant and why are we not testing enough?
Not knowing deep enough about how metabolic health impacts arterial health and how arterial health impacts cardiac health.
Do you think genetically we are at a higher risk?
Problem is not high rise. Problem is less fiber, less vegetables, less fruits and less protein. They eat fruits thinking it's healthy. I'm not saying it's unhealthy, but I think
What are some of the signs that we should be taking as a cue?
anything which can cause us heart stroke can cause a brain stroke.
Older adults somehow strongly believe that walking or very low intensity exercises are the only safe way to heart health.
If you're walking very comfortably, chit-chatting with your friend, talking about politics, it's more of a
In the last 30 years, there is a 60% rise in cardiovascular diseases, making it the top reason for death in India. That's a steep rise. What are the modern day root causes for cardiovascular diseases?
we have been hearing this, right? A 40-year-old dying of a sudden heart attack, a 50-year-old dying of a sudden heart attack.
Even
Or
20, 30-year-olds
yes,
as well.
sometimes they don't even have a family history. Or they look very fit on the outside. We have been seeing that in the last 3 years. Even if you look at the data, 50% of the heart attacks occur in men under the age of 50.
Right.
And 25% of the heart attacks occur in men under the age of 40.
Okay.
And this has been growing from the time of COVID. Like this, when I was looking at the data of Cleveland Clinic, after COVID, there's 12% increase in cardiovascular diseases and deaths. Yes, of course, there is a change in the environment, change in the stressor, that is a viral infection, that was a stressor also. So, looking fit on the outside doesn't guarantee our health. We should look deep. I think everybody, even in 20s and 30s, should know their numbers. How is their sleep? How is their heart rate variability? How is their resting metabolic rate? How are their simple metrics that look into their metabolic health, that look into their lipid profile? I think all of us in 20s and 30s should get this test done. We always had preventive health checkups, preventive heart checkups for 50 plus years. We have never seen a 20-year-old getting a complete panel or a checkup which is as deep as getting to know their heart. But in today's time, we shouldn't wait. What happens if we wait? We have been screening so many individuals at our center. I have seen so many sitting on a time bomb with their atherogenic profile with high ApoB, high lipoprotein A. I think in this scenario at least, we are not proved for healthy hearts.
Right. You just mentioned a line, right? Even though there is no family history, we blame genes all the time, and people in fact accept it as fate as well. But are genes everything, or is it one of the main reasons for heart diseases?
We should admit South Asians are at a higher risk for cardiovascular disease because n number of people we see have higher risk for lipoprotein small a, which raises the risk for atherogenic profile, or to simply put it, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Also, they have a higher risk for apolipoprotein B, which is also major determinant. Even if these two are high and lipid profile is normal, they are at risk for heart diseases. On the contrary, there are certain individuals who look normal body weight. The lipid profile also is normal, but metabolically they are not healthy. For example, they could look normal on the outside, but their fat mass is higher, like visceral adipose tissue. They could have fatty liver. They could have insulin resistance. They have risk of heart disease similar to people who have abnormal lipid profiles.
Right.
So I think yes, genetically we are to some extent determined to have cardiovascular diseases on a higher side, but we can work around it. Genetics is not everything. We have individuals whose families are not prone for cardiovascular diseases, but we still see cardiovascular diseases in them.
Right.
So though genetics are loaded with the gun, we can pull the trigger. We can choose not to pull the trigger as well. So we need to tightly work on our lifestyle, nutrition. We
need not accept it
we
as
need
our
not
fate.
accept it as fate and sit and not do anything about it.
Right. Age definitely, but even people who get regular checkups in their 30s and 40s also, with the regular routine checkups, I think, you know, they have very perfect track record. Their lipids are okay, the cholesterol profile, the triglycerides, everything is okay, but still like end up with sudden heart attacks. Like, what are we fundamentally missing when it comes to tests?
I need to give this example. I've talked about it in our longevity case series as well, right? This phenomenon called TOFI, thin outside, fat inside, or metabolically unhealthy normal weight, whatever term we name it. A lot of South Asians test looks normal, they look normal, but one fine day we may hear, oh, they underwent a sudden angiogram, they had to undergo a stent. This happens mostly because of course we are supporting our genetics in some or the other way, but genetics are also playing a very important role here. Let's talk about something called methylation. For n number of people, I have seen homocysteine on the higher side, I have seen lipoprotein small a also on the higher side. If we have levers like this 2 or 3, they will increase the overall risk. So we always think, okay, lipids are normal, then I won't have a heart disease. No, it is not so. Even if lipids are normal, if you are not methylating well, that means you're not protecting DNA well, which simple things like methylation of vitamin B9, methylation of vitamin B12 are not happening appropriately. We are not protecting our DNA, henceforth homocysteine will rise, and once homocysteine rises, it damages the arteries. That is one side. And on the other side, what we have been seeing is 70% of the clients have insulin resistance. I think that is the metric we are missing. I think we should look little deeper, one layer down, not at a superficial population level, and just screen for complete blood picture, complete urine picture, where it will speak only about abnormalities when everything has gone wrong. But we want to concentrate preventing on things, then we need to work one layer deep and see, are my arteries damaged? Do I have more oxidative stress? Do I have inflammation in the body? Am I methylating well? Am I metabolically healthy? These are few things that we need to see, and those are the tests we need to do as well.
Okay. Since you're mentioning lipoprotein A multiple times, why is it so significant and why are we not testing enough?
Lipoprotein A is very significant. Similarly, finding out the oxidized lipoproteins also is important, because these tests are not done at a regular regular labs,
Exactly,
and prices are also not easy, right? Not everybody has access, or financial issues also are a problem. But nothing is more important than investing in our own health, because if we invest well now today in our 20s 30s, we can reap the benefits later, and we can avoid paying 4 times higher when we are sick in our 50s and 60s. That is how I believe.
Right.
So one could be financial limitation. Another one is not knowing deep enough about how metabolic health impacts arterial health and how arterial health impacts cardiac health. I think we all need to start testing for lipoprotein small a, because it raises the risk of plaque formation, that is rusting of arteries in another language, and that also raises the risk for inflammation and oxidative stress.
Okay.
So I think that is a very important metric, and we need to start looking at it, because there are individuals who had heart diseases and heart attacks even with normal lipoproteins, lipid levels like LDL normal,
Correct,
HDL
yeah.
okay, triglycerides not very high, but lipoprotein A is high.
Okay.
That's why we recommend, if they have a family history, they have early death in the family, or their lipids are normal but they have an incident of heart disease, then we need to target their lipoprotein small a. We need
Okay.
to keep it under 30.
Okay. So, along with all the tests that you've mentioned, I think in general, when we say heart diseases, I think we very commonly test for hypertension, lipid profile, triglycerides, etc. And lipoprotein A is something we need to add. Are there any other tests that are very critical when it comes to heart health?
Very critical, I would say, is HSCRP, homocysteine, triglyceride to HDL ratio. I think that ratio matters more than total cholesterol. People see it in silos. Oh, my total cholesterol is high. I need to bring it down. No, total cholesterol is important for hormones. It is very, very important. But the ratios are more important. How is triglyceride to HDL ratio? I think keeping the HDL on a higher side will reduce the risk. And similarly, keeping homocysteine under 10 is important. HSCRP, keeping it lower is important. And lipoprotein A, apart from that, apolipoprotein B, these are all very important metrics apart from fasting insulin, home IR.
Okay, great. And also for Southeast Asians, you just mentioned that genetically we are at a higher risk for cardiovascular disease. Do you think it has a direct correlation to our diet, which is predominantly built on grain?
Many people end up giving this bad reputation for rice.
Yeah.
But I think it depends on the activity, right? If your activity level is moderate to severe, like you're mobile throughout the day, then it is not going, rice is not going to hamper you. But in a balance and in portion size that is appropriate to physical activity. So if you're taking rice in a balanced portions along with protein source, along with vegetables and fruits and nuts, and you're balancing it out with physical activity, rice is not a harm. But yes, if you have a metabolic dysfunction, if you have insulin resistance, if you have fatty liver disease, if you have high uric acid levels, and if you have high lipoprotein, small a, apolipoprotein B, then we need to be way more careful. Because rice is a high glycemic index food. That means it's going to give immediate sugars to your body. But if you are not primed for it, if you're metabolically not healthy, you're not going to utilize it. You're going to store it as a fat and it's going to impact your arteries. Then in those scenarios you should cut down portion size little more lesser compared to others. So I think we need to context we need to add here is we should match it to our physical activity, we should match it to our genetic risk, we should match it to our other markers of metabolic health. How are they at that point in time? If that point in time you are at higher risk, we should go lower on the rice.
Got it.
So yes. And also what matters is what is going with the rice. Lot of times people end up eating biryani. So they may end up with a lot of red meat. They may end up with saturated fat, higher saturated fat. I think some people eat less of fiber, take less protein. So problem is not high rice. Problem is less fiber, less vegetables, less fruits and less protein. Along with that, what comes along hidden along with the rice and decreased activity, of course. It's a no-brainer.
Because I think recent articles are calling our diet, especially rice and grains, like silent killers. So it's not as straightforward as it is being portrayed.
Even in the ICMR India study, which is what you're referring to, which said most of the calories, 30% of our calories, we get it from the carbs that we eat. That is mostly grains that we eat.
Correct, yeah.
For some people, that is okay. If you're physically active, you're metabolically healthy, then you don't have a problem. And you're taking protein moderately well. Problem is sedentary activity. Problem is along with that rice, you're taking sugary drinks, canned beverages, processed meats, processed foods, which has high salt content in it. So these go unnoticed. Lack of protein and fiber in the meals, no balance in the meals, lack of vegetables and fruits. I see many people. They lack fiber, they lack vegetables, they lack fruits in the diet, no nuts. So I think lack of other things is showing grain as a culprit for everything. I think balance is the key, context is the key.
Mutton biryani with Coke to be avoided at all costs. In that case.
But if your metabolic health is good, you're eating fiber on most days. If you eat vegetables on most days, you eat all sources of protein, both veg and non-veg, you can enjoy your biryani because you're exercising as well.
Right. And social media, when I open, there are so many options for superfoods or so many options for heart health diet, etc. But which foods are actually proven, to protect the heart?
Whatever protects your arteries, brain, and prevents diabetes and hypertension also protects the heart. There's nothing like a uric acid healthy food and heart healthy food. Of course, there will be certain specific things. If we go into those specific things, we need to be taking omega-3 rich foods like fish, walnuts, nuts. Plenty of vegetables, moderate fruits. When I say fruits, low glycemic index fruits. If you speak specifically, then of course omega-3 rich foods, berries. Lot of studies showed handful of berries every day will reduce the risk, and also handful of nuts every day will reduce the risk. Also, there was specific study which proved 5 different kinds of vegetables and fruits every day has reduced the risk in 12 weeks.
Right.
So these are all heart healthy foods, I would say.
Got it.
And omega-3 rich foods, when we say that, it's long chain fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids.
So when you say like low glycemic index fruits, can you little bit elaborate on that? Because many people end up eating just fruits instead of dinner. Or even when they're fasting, they fast with fruits, thinking that it's healthy.
That is a problem when you ask me top 3 foods or specific foods. It's always with the context, right? When we say fruits are healthy, it doesn't mean you eat fruits for breakfast, lunch, dinner all the time, and you eat mangoes, sapotas, and grapes all the time. So high glycemic index fruits also have high fructose in them. Of course, there is a fiber in them. Yes, you deserve to eat all of them if you're metabolically healthy, but you should choose to eat in lesser portion sizes, lesser portions, and after the meals if you're metabolically unhealthy. Limit
When
the
we
portion
eat
size.
matters.
When we eat matters, and also how much we eat, portion size matters. But if you're metabolically healthy, okay, enjoy them, but again, moderation. But if you're metabolically unhealthy, choose them to eat it towards the end of your meals where you have ate your vegetables, protein, etc. and in small portion sizes. In contrary, we have seen people breaking their fast with fruits, ending their day with fruits, so much fructose all the time, and they are having diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease. They eat fruits thinking it's healthy. I'm not saying it's unhealthy. It's packed with a lot of nutrients, packed with fiber, but I think the baseline health matters. If you can deal with that fruit, you have it.
Great. Got it. I think one of the most scariest things, right? They say that the first presenting symptom of a heart disease is a stroke, which is very scary, right? But I like to believe that it takes years. It doesn't happen like, just like that. So before the symptoms develop for any kind of heart diseases, what are some of the signs that we should be taking as a cue to get, to be more conscious?
We were talking about blood tests to be done for preventive heart diseases, right? One more important thing we need to look at is heart rate variability, pulse wave velocity, augmentation index. These fancy terms indicate find out if your arteries are becoming stiffer, find out if your arteries are not producing enough nitric oxide which can keep them dilated, find out if your arteries are being inflamed.
How do we do that?
So how do we do it? To find out inflammation, we look into homocysteine, hsCRP, etc. To look into arterial stiffness, then we need to look for pulse wave velocity, augmentation index, which are done through non-invasive methods. To look at oxidative stress, it is indicated by your symptoms. There are a lot of symptoms which indicate like fatigue, poor energy, feeling sleepy after the meals, all these, and frequently prone to infections, joint pains, all of these indicate oxidative stress. Same problems which can cause atherosclerotic cardiovascular diseases also increases risk for cerebrovascular stroke. Anything which can cause heart stroke can cause a brain stroke. So for the preventive analysis of brain stroke, we need to be looking at carotid intima media thickness, also called CIMT.
Okay.
Similarly, for legs, we need to do FIMT, femoral. So these are some of the preventive checks that we need to be doing because we want to identify early onset of atherosclerosis, early onset of vascular damage. Anybody who is aging faster at vasculature, vascular age is higher, that means they are at an increased risk for hypertension and cardiovascular diseases and stroke.
Okay.
So often these go unnoticed because sometimes even hypertension, people don't have any symptoms. Even when they have grade 1 hypertension, no symptoms. Grade 2 hypertension, no symptoms. These are the people with no symptoms end up with sudden MIs or sudden strokes.
Right.
That's why I'm saying, please know your numbers. If you're in your 20, 30, or 40, please know your numbers. Know your heart rate variability, resting heart rate. Know your blood pressure in both the arms. Know your resting heart rate. I think knowing all these is very important.
And how many years before the stroke comes, you think our arteries start to get stiff?
Arteries can stiffen from the age of 20 or 30 depending on our lifestyle. Suppose take an individual who is a 30-year-old very recently walked into the clinic with no symptoms, right? Only preventive health check. Then we did preventive checks and we saw that there is early onset arterial stiffness. Lipid profile is normal. Lipoprotein A is on the trending side, higher side. And there is family history of early onset cardiac diseases in the family. So what do we expect? This person can't wait till he gets higher blood pressure. He has to take an action now. So he need to work on introducing omega-3 rich foods, working through Mediterranean diet, quit alcohol and smoking, introduce walking, introduce exercise into the lifestyle. All those can reduce the arterial stiffness, or in fact in the early stages it can even reverse it.
Okay. And since HRV is also a very important metric for avoiding heart diseases, how do we measure it? How do we measure HRV?
These days, we see a lot of people wearing the rings and wrist wearables where they're tracking HRV, the sleep architecture, the resting heart rate, etc. Why do we need to check HRVs? We have seen a lot of silent heart attacks many times. That is because they have something called autonomic dysfunction. When they have autonomic dysfunction, there's no pain. Pain is an earlier alert for an individual to rush to hospital. In the absence of pain, it can cause sudden MI, sudden heart attack.
Right.
So these are the people who have something called autonomic dysfunction, where there are two pathways, sympathetic, parasympathetic, where it gives that flexibility to the heart to go high and low when needed. When we are resting, it should go lower side. When we are not resting, and when there is a threat, it should become higher. So that kind of flexibility is HRV. HRV should be higher.
Higher as in
more,
what should someone aim at?
More than 40 is minimum basic that is required, but more than 60 you can save yourself.
Okay.
But I have seen people training well, looking fit, looking healthy, looking muscular, great metabolic health, HOMA are low, insulin sensitive, very low VAT mass. But one thing was unsolved for that person, which is HRV was low all the time.
Yeah, I've seen
around
that too.
25, 29 like that. So what was missing? Recovery was missing. Sleep was missing. If you're not recovering and sleeping and hydrating, and if you're not working on that component, then no matter how healthy your metabolic system is, it's going to increase atherosclerosis. That means it's going to cause soft plaques in your arteries, and they are going to have calcium deposits, and that's called calcium scoring in the tests. And that's how we end up with atherosclerotic cardiovascular diseases. So it is possible. Somebody could be metabolically healthy, HRV could be low, and can land up with a heart disease. So it's not a single metric that we can talk about. Oh, you have normal LDL, you'll have a healthy heart. We cannot say that in today's time. We need to be looking at all of these components.
Okay. So can stress also be a direct correlation for HRV, for low HRV?
Stress can mess up our hormonal systems. It will mess up our sleep architecture. It will mess up our heart rate variability and resting heart rate. Ultimately, stress will mess up with our sugars, metabolic health, everything. I think stress has correlations with everything. Yeah, stress is bad.
Got it. People also fear statins and BP medication, right? Of course, because it has certain side effects. But is the bigger danger actually delaying these medications? And like, how do someone decide, or like when do they start these BP medications or statins?
Let me give you an example. There is a 25 or 30-year-old. LDL is high, for example, 180.
Right.
But lipoprotein little a is normal, ApoB is normal, homocysteine is okay, no family history of heart disease. This person should work on lifestyle, nutrition, stress, sleep, and movement.
Okay.
We can wait. There is time. But a similar age person, LDL is high, but apolipoprotein B also is high, lipoprotein small a also is high, or there is a family history of early cardiac deaths, then we shouldn't wait. That person should be treated immediately.
Correct.
Because he'll carry a greater risk of heart disease in his 40s. So I think when there is a family history or when this atherogenic lipid profile is there, we shouldn't wait. We need to start the treatment. Of course, the kind of treatment varies. If you are starting with zero, like you are on a bad diet, you're a bad lifestyle, no exercise, first start with them. But if you have already worked on your exercise, movement, you have already started eating clean, and still your LDL is not nudging or your lipid profile is not moving anywhere, then that is time that we need to take an action.
Got it.
There are some people whose blood pressure is at 180, 170, and they still want to wait. Oh no, let me wait, let me change my nutrition and come back to you. But I think that will take time. So I think immediately reducing the blood pressure will reduce the mortality and reduce the risk of heart disease or sudden deaths. So when the blood pressures are higher, like in grade 2 or grade 3 hypertension, we shouldn't wait. We need to reduce the immediate risk first,
Right.
and simultaneously work on fixing the root causes. We should do both.
As long as it's borderline, lifestyle interventions can help. But when it is already diagnosed, then like starting off with a small dose as per the physician
Should be good.
should be good.
When coming to statin, also there are mixed reviews on statin. But
Yeah,
let's
people are very confused about statins, right?
let's break it down. It's most researched. Statin is most researched, but most of the time it started unnecessarily for young people at an early age. We need to take their lifestyle and physical activity into context. We need to take their family history and their genetics into context. If genetically they are at a higher risk for familiar hyperlipidemia, also called FH, then these are the people who deserve statins. But there is no familial hyperlipoproteinemia, no high triglycerides, but their lifestyle is messed up. I think we should start on fixing their lifestyle, start on fixing their vascular health, start on reducing their inflammation, reducing that oxidative stress, and making the arteries elastic is very important. We need to start. We need not start for everybody. But there are people who had a history of stroke, had a history of cardiovascular event, or had a history of familiar hyperlipoproteinemia. Then these are the people who deserve secondary prevention. I think they need statins because statins in these subsect of people are shown to reduce the secondary event.
And to perfect heart health, what can be the exercise protocol one can follow?
If you're doing nothing, then start at least with 30 minutes of activity 5 times a week, a simple aerobic activity that you love. It could be jogging, swimming, yoga, Pilates, whatever you like. But if you have already been doing that, then preserve your muscle, have a mechanical load on your muscle, start strength training. Okay, now you're doing both. You're doing strength training and you're also working on your minimal basic aerobic exercise. Then work on your high intensity interval training or sprint interval training. That could be once a week or twice a week, depending on the individual.
I have like one question or like one biggest myth. Older adults somehow strongly believe that walking or like very low intensity exercises are the only safe way to heart health. Where did that belief come from?
People have been walking for ages, which was normal part of the movement. Now the new movement is people thinking walking is exercise as well, because we have become so much sedentary that moving is become exercise, sadly. But if you want to make walking an exercise, then at least push yourself a little harder, make it a little brisk, become breathless, and that is how you're. When do we call it exercise, right? Like you push your limits and become breathless for a certain period of time. It acts as a stressor, and that is an exercise.
Right.
If you're walking very comfortably, chit-chatting with your friend, talking about politics, drama, family drama and everything, it's more of a therapy session. I think we should make it an exercise, then we should make it a brisk. But for adults, I think they should pace it out. If they are going to make walking an exercise, then smart way to do is intermittent walking. For a certain period of time, you walk briskly and then slow it down and do it in cycles. At least that would look like a high intensity interval training for them.
But as such, high interval training, even in older adults, is safe, right?
If their cardiac health is looked into, if the red flags are ruled out, then it's safe.
If someone wants to reduce the risk of heart disease, what is the single habit that they need to change today?
Sleep for good heart health.
And what is that one habit that they should let go?
Alcohol. Thank you for watching this video till the end. If you found this video informative, I'm sure you'll like previous two videos as well. One was on inflammation and other was on BMI. So for more such informative videos, please do subscribe to PMX Health.